Hi, welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, the U.S. Justice Department is suing the Pennsylvania State Police over fitness standards, and then the job market in Pennsylvania. Let's get to it.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Well, what took us all by surprise this past week is the U.S. Justice Department filed suit against the Pennsylvania State Police over physical fitness standards, arguing a disparate impact that those standards have on female applicants for want to be a state cop. That's what happens. Joining me to talk about that and a few other subjects is Angela Couloumbis. She's with the Philadelphia Inquirer, and Karen Langley with the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Both of these are great reporters. They cover the Capitol, the state capitol, on a daily basis for their respective papers. All right, Karen, let's start with you. This came as something of a surprise, I think, to most people. It seemed to come out of the blue. There had been no warning. You all are in the Harrisburg, covering this. But tell me this. What's the basis for this lawsuit?
So the state police have a fitness test that applicants have to pass if they are applying to be a state trooper. And according to this lawsuit that the Justice Department filed against Pennsylvania, there is a big difference in the rates of women and men who are applying who pass this test. Something like 98% of men pass this physical test, and I think 72% of women do. And so there's a civil rights lawsuit now saying that there is this disparate impact on women who want to get into the state police here.
I mean, I noticed also that the reaction by the state police was pretty strong. Angela, you're smiling. I mean, it was real. I mean, they were outright outraged.
It was unequivocal.
Yeah, good point.
Colonel Noonan came out and said he's going to fight the lawsuit until the end. And he said that the state police should not have to lower standards. And that the standards are very reasonable, and we can talk about that because... Yeah,
I was wondering, well, hold on a minute. First of all, that's a great way to put it. He said here, and I have it, the Pennsylvania State Police won't be bullied.
Right.
I mean, quote, end quote, bullied, right?
Right.
Well, let's go over some of these standards. I mean, I think in this day and age, we all want to make sure that women have an equal opportunity. I mean, it's the right thing to do, and these standards we can discuss. Who wants to start with these? Let's go through some of them. Sit push-ups. Go ahead.
13 push-ups, no time frame.
Okay.
There is also about a 1.5 mile run.
Mm-hmm. And a quicker run, a 300-yard dash.
And that, but the 1.5 mile run, you have 17 minutes.
A little longer than 17 minutes, almost 18 minutes.
Okay.
So we're talking a 12-minute-a-mile pace, which is not that fast to be running.
Right. And a vertical jump of 14 inches. Now, I'm not sure I could do that. Now go ahead, Angela.
But you could probably work up to it, I would think, if you practiced. And there is perhaps an expectation, and a reasonable expectation, that if you're not at that fitness level, you can certainly get to it, if not fairly quickly, within a 6 month to a year time frame.
Yeah. Now, both of you are pretty fit. I'm not going to ask you. I was going to suggest that you'd see if you could do these, Karen. You could probably. Yeah, I mean, we don't have to judge. I mean, I think it doesn't seem on the surface to be unreasonable, but I guess the bottom line here legally is the disparate effect, women versus men passing the test. Is that correct?
Yeah, and one of the things that the Justice Department said in its press statement about this was that it framed that disparate impact in the context of suggesting that these standards might be beyond what is actually required for the state troopers to do their work. So I think that is something that we will hear about as this goes forward.
Like chase the bad guys and worry about guns and all the stuff that they do to protect us. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm sure both of you are going to be following this story as it unfolds into court. Well, let's go to something else. Big news. In an unusual summer session, the State House is poised to come back Monday.
Right.
Take it.
Well, on paper, they are poised to come back on Monday. That hasn't changed, but behind the scenes, there's a lot of hand-wringing and a lot of frantic phone calls going on. about whether they should perhaps postpone it. And they're coming back Monday to vote on the fiscal bill, which is a budget-related bill,
Right.
which, among other things, contains a very important authorization for a cigarette tax for the city of Philadelphia.
Hugely important.
Very important, and it's also important to get it done fairly quickly, because without it, the mayor of Philadelphia, Michael Nutter, and the superintendent of schools there, William Haidt, have said that the schools would likely not be able to open on time.
All right, we're going to run to a break. When we come back, I want to pursue this a little bit. And then we have an interesting question about whether a former Secretary of Education, it has been alleged, is making a pretty good salary but not showing up for work. We'll get into that charge and what the response has been from the Department of Education in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Please visit pahighwayinfo.org. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Welcome back to the program with Angela Couloumbis and Karen Langley, two reporters who cover the state capitol, and we're chatting with the House is back in a special session, I'll call it that, rare in August to deal with the Philadelphia cigarette tax. What are the implications of this tax for the Philly schools? Go ahead, lay that out.
Well, the schools are facing about a $90 million deficit, and the cigarette tax in the first year would raise about $83 million. And I should say that the cigarette tax is included in the municipal code bill, which is being voted on Monday. I didn't want viewers to confuse that. And they need it because they fear that without it, they are not going to be able to open up schools without having class sizes at 40-plus kids
Are they going
per
to
class.
possibly? I've heard maybe lay off more staff. Is that possible?
Yes, laying off about 1,300 district employees is what the mayor said, and layoff notices, and this is where the time element comes in. Layoff notices go out middle of the month of next month.
That would
in
be
August.
probably under the union contract, or, well, without getting into that.
Notification, yes.
Requirement. Now, if the House comes back and does this, then the Senate has to come back, because if they don't do it, then the tax won't be, right? Is the Senate poised to do that?
Well, both chambers have to agree to any changes that are made to legislation. I suspect that the Senate right now is just waiting to see what the House does, since I don't think it seems clear yet what, in fact, is going to happen next week.
Okay, so get this straight. House is coming back. We'll see. If they bring it up, there may be some question about whether it even passes. Now, most of the Democrats, I would suspect, in the state will vote for it, but you could have significant defections among Republicans.
Yes.
Am I right or wrong about that?
Yes, there are a couple of different issues. One is an attendance issue. You know, there are a lot of these legislators have scheduled vacations, and some of them are not even in the country. So it's very difficult to get them back. So automatically you have a vote count issue. But there is a growing number of Republicans, many of them conservative, who feel like they don't really want to come back just to vote on a municipal code bill that has an authorizing tax for the city of Philadelphia.
All right, well, let's turn to one other issue. It was a big issue. It's become part of the gubernatorial campaign. Now, what issue doesn't become part of the gubernatorial campaign? Former Secretary of Education Ron Tomales was given a position as a special advisor, a special assistant to the governor. If you look at the work, you know, you want to continue. Go ahead. So
Sure.
what's the charge and what's the response been?
So two of my colleagues at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, Bill Schackner and Mary Niederberger, who cover education, published a story earlier this week reporting that Ron Tamales, who had been Corbett's education secretary and who was given a job as a special advisor, helping him on post-secondary education issues, that Mr. Tamales, that there was not, substantial evidence of the work that he has been doing during the more than 1 year that he has had this post,
right,
which carries the cabinet level secretary, compensation.
Sure, close to the cabinet level
salary and
right,
benefits and all. And so they had filed a right to know request and gotten records that showed something like 5 work-related emails during this year-long period, a few hundred phone calls. They were not able to speak to Mr. Tamales about this. They had the education department had set some criteria about which reporters could conduct such interview, but the acting education secretary, Karen Langley, did talk to them.
I was going to say
said that Mr. Tamales goes to work.
Right. On the other side, we're going to give both sides of this. On the other side of it, Karen Langley, the acting secretary of education, has said what?
That her office is right down the hall from Mr. Tamales's, that she sees him every time she's there, that he is at work and that he's producing, and that his role has somewhat changed since he came in as a special advisor on higher education issues. Now he's doing some K through 12 issues as well, is what they've said.
That if I recall the press accounts, she says that when she gets in there, he's there working. And it may be that he's doing a lot of face-to-face, not a lot of email, and a lot of other ways that you would normally communicate. Where does this go? I mean, now it's involved in the campaign, but I don't, Well,
I should point out that the one other thing that they turned up, it's not just about this phone log business, but they spoke with some of the high up officials in higher education in the state. They talked to Penn State and to Pitt, and who both said that they couldn't find any contact with Mr. Tamales.
Yeah. It's problematic. It looks bad.
Okay.
It looks bad for him.
All right, but we'll have to see where it plays out. I mean, typically it's hard to know where this will go. Well, look, I want to thank you both for coming in for the update. All right, jobs, and more jobs. We're going to talk with Dave Patti. He's the president and CEO of the Pennsylvania Business Council, and Secretary Hearthway. He's the secretary of the Department of Labor and Industry. We'll get a little update on the jobs picture in Pennsylvania, and we'll do that talking about jobs and money. We'll do that after we pay our bills.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania, and by the Pennsylvania Coal Alliance, representing companies involved in America's most affordable, reliable energy source. To learn more, visit pacoalalliance.com.
Welcome back to the program. We're going to talk about jobs, and more jobs, and what's going on with the possibilities of employment in this state. Joining me is Dave Patti. He's the president and CEO of the Pennsylvania Business Council, and Julia Hearthway, Secretary Hearthway, I'm going to get that right, Pennsylvania Department of Labor and Industry. All right, Secretary, let's start with the unemployment figures are relatively low. They've been dropping. A fair number of people not in the workforce. They've quit, just looking. What's your assessment in your important role of the jobs picture in this state right now?
We're really doing very well. And I know for some people still looking, it may not seem like it, but truthfully, our unemployment rate is 5.6%. That's significantly below the national at 6.2%. We have had an increase in private sector jobs of just under 180,000 since the governor took office. That number, our private sector job number, is higher now than it was pre-recessionary level on private sector jobs. It is an economy that has been coming back. It's been a steady climb back into. We've recovered fairly well from the recession. And a point to be made here is that Pennsylvania has a very diverse economy. We're unlike our Ohio neighbor that is largely in the automotive industry.
Right.
60% of their state economy is automotive. Our largest sector of employment is healthcare, and that stands at 15%. So we have a very diverse industry.
And we have a big agriculture sector.
We
just had Chris Herb from,
right?
yeah, you saw from the talking. I was trying to force him into a debate about whether manufacturing or agriculture was the leading, or tourism, but he wouldn't go there. It was pretty good. He just, go ahead.
And the point of that is all of these sectors are growing at a good, steady pace. So we are doing well. Our recovery from the recession is good. Our unemployment is low. Now, we still have people unemployed, and we're still working on that, but our economy is coming back, and it's coming back, and it has a strong, solid base, and it's coming back in each of those sectors.
Dave, let me stay on this subject. I mean, one of the problems that is reoccurring, is a national problem, is that, and given where I work at a college, the students graduate, and it's a tough economy to begin, and many of them have moved back home. God forbid they're back home with us. They come back home. I actually liked that when my son came back home for a while. I really enjoyed that. What's this transition like? I mean, is this matching the jobs?
Well, there is a bit of a skills gap.
Go
I mean, you hear a lot
ahead.
about the skills gap,
Right.
and that it's true, it's real, it's out there, and part of that is, a lot of that, in fact, is in skilled labor. So less than the 4-year degree, but the training that you get after high school, maybe before a 4-year degree. We surely need people there. Engineers and the STEM types of 4-year degrees, chemistry, biology, because of our life sciences industry in Pennsylvania, the process industries, those are very, very critical, and we need those. The energy industry, of course, growing leaps and bounds in Pennsylvania is taking up all of both the skilled labor that they can and STEM 4-year degrees.
So your point would be that there are jobs there. We need to it's this transition.
We want to make sure that
getting
the education and training and workforce development is there, and that's why the State Workforce Investment Board that the Secretary heads up with Dave Malone, who is the private sector chair.
What's that about?
It's a statewide board that helps run a more of cohesive strategic strategy on workforce for all of our local workforce investment boards. There's 22 of them around the state. And the state WIB sort of oversees that. And it's all about connecting workforce development with our economic development. The two go hand in hand.
The important part is those 22 boards that you referenced. One for Lancaster County, one for Berks. Some of our smaller counties up north have multiple counties in one unit, but they're there to work with employers and the job trainers and the higher education people in that region, something specific to the region.
I want to run to a break, but when I come back, we hear an awful lot about Congress and how dysfunctional it is, but they actually did something, that we're going to talk about. It's a job training program that Congress just passed. We're going to have the Secretary and Patti weigh in on that.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Highmark Blue Shield, changing the way health plans work for business with a variety of plan options for employers and more choices for employees. Information is available at highmark.com. Have a greater hand in your company's health. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Business Council and by the Pennsylvania Business Council Education Foundation.
Welcome back to the program. We're talking about jobs with the Secretary of the Pennsylvania Department of Labor and Industry, Julia Hearthway, and Patti from the Pennsylvania Business Council. All right, we talk about the dysfunctional Congress, Mr. Secretary. You don't have to comment about that. I will. It's dysfunctional. But they did a bipartisan vote on a jobs training program. Why is that important tell our viewers why that's important in Pennsylvania?
This is the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, and it's an act where federal funds come into each state to help develop workforce. And it's an act that hadn't really been updated or changed in over 20 years. And every governor was behind this, from both parties, supporting some changes in the Workforce and Innovation and Opportunity Act. And it passed overwhelmingly in Congress, bipartisan support. And these are federal funds that come into each state to help develop the workforce. And essentially, the big ticket items on it is it gave the states a little bit more control. Instead of putting that control in the federal government, to let them work locally with what their local economy needs. It gave...
Makes sense to me.
Absolutely. More accountability in terms of results-oriented, as opposed to just getting a certificate in a program. It's getting a job in a program, so there's a little change in emphasis. And it's a plus for the entire country, but it's clearly a plus for Pennsylvania.
Now, I know you know the answer to this question. Did Senators Toomey and Casey both vote for it?
Everybody was on board.
Everybody.
Entire Pennsylvania delegation.
Well, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Yeah. All right, before I let you all go, Dave, I'll start with you on this. Job Summit in Pittsburgh at the end of the month. What's that about? Why is that
Governor
important?
Corbett and Secretary Hearthway have put together a two-day summit to bring employers, academics, workforce development professionals, corporate leaders, CEOs of some of our biggest firms, and not just from Pennsylvania, but T. Boone Pickens coming up from Texas, talk about energy, together in Pittsburgh on the 25th and 26th of August, Monday and Tuesday in August. We'll be at the David Lawrence Convention Center to try and bring everybody together, not to just talk, though, but to really work, to get some results about, all right, how do we move forward? How do we get to those 5.6% who are still unemployed? How do we get to the people who are underemployed and don't have the good job that they want to have? We have created a lot of family-sustaining jobs through energy, through our bio and life sciences, through our manufacturing, through healthcare, but how do we keep that going into the 21st century?
Is that going to be covered by PCN or Pennsylvania Cable Network, and you're going to do,
Yes,
so
I believe it will be. It will be aired a little bit later, obviously,
fine.
but we'll have lots of coverage on it. And it's really taking our workforce development sort of to the next stage, and bringing largely employers to talk about what they're looking for, and it's how to do this faster, smarter, better, but also connecting. I mean, there are a lot of things we're doing that are working very well.
Small businesses, the big engine of growth, the same, David?
Sure. Everybody's invited. Everybody will be there. And you have to remember, too, that the reason small business grows is because 80% of what they sell is to big business, or at least in a lot of sectors of it. Obviously, there's retail and there's restaurants. But for a lot of the others, they are outsourcing. They are the outsourced provider to the big firms. So we're all in it together.
All right. Well, look, I want to thank both of you for coming in. Secretary Hearthway, given your schedule, thank you for coming in and providing us with an update. All right. We'll see you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers. And as always, stay well.